Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The moment I shut the car door behind me, I felt it. That weird tension in the air. The kind that tells you something's off but doesn't scream it, just whispers. The kind of silence that stretches out a little too long, like everyone's holding their breath. I wasn't supposed to be there. That's the thing. I was only in the back seat because my car wouldn't start and I had a headache so bad I saw colors. Lydia, my wife, was out with friends from her book club, and I didn't want to bother her. So I texted my business partner's assistant, whose name I barely remembered, asking if anyone from the team could give me a lift after the meeting. A few minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up, our company's shared vehicle. The assistant wasn't driving. It was our junior marketing lead, Miles, a guy I'd only ever spoken to in passing. Too smooth, too charming, always too confident. I climbed in anyway, grateful and dizzy, and that's when I noticed the perfume. It wasn't the faint kind that lingers. It was fresh, strong, familiar. Lydia's perfume. I blinked. For a second, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I'd caught a whiff from my own clothes. But then I saw it. A small pink scarf, wedged between the seat cushions. Not folded. Not forgotten. Still warm. Miles saw me staring at it in the rearview mirror. He adjusted it slightly, then turned up the music. My heart started pounding, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. We were halfway across town when he asked, too casually, "So, you and Lydia doing okay?" I didn't answer. He drummed his fingers on the wheel. "Sorry. That was weird. Forget I asked." But it was too late. That sentence cracked something open in my chest, and everything I'd ignored started pouring out. The late-night wellness retreats. The locked phone. The sudden interest in Pilates, of all things. The time she called me Mason in her sleep, and I'm not Mason. And now, her perfume. Her scarf. In a car she was never supposed to be in. When we got to my place, I didn't get out. I just sat there in the back seat, staring at the scarf like it could explain itself. Then I asked the question that would wreck everything. "How long has she been riding with you?" Miles didn't answer. He didn't have to. His face turned to stone. That was the moment I knew. But the worst part? That wasn't even the real betrayal. The truth came later, and it hit harder than anything I'd ever expected. I sat in that back seat long after the engine cut off. The street outside was quiet, but my mind was screaming. Miles didn't say anything else. He didn't even look at me. He just stared straight ahead. Like if he stayed still enough, maybe I'd forget I asked. I didn't press him again. I didn't need to. That look in his eyes, that was the kind of silence you only get from guilt. Heavy, uncomfortable, practiced. When I finally stepped out of the car, I felt like I was walking through water. Everything was too slow, too surreal. I walked into my house and the scent followed me in. Her scent. That same perfume that clung to the back seat, clung to the scarf, clung to my damn memory. I sat down at the kitchen table and just stared at the wall for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat, like my brain needed time to recalibrate. Lydia came home around midnight, humming like nothing in the world had changed. She walked past me, kissed the top of my head, and said, "You're up late, baby." That's what broke me. Not the kiss. Not the smell of the exact same perfume she'd apparently sprayed all over another man's car, but the casual lie wrapped in affection. "You're up late, baby." As if she hadn't just walked out of one version of me and into another. I nodded and said nothing. She poured herself a glass of wine, scrolled through her phone, and laughed at something on Instagram. She looked so comfortable, so normal, and I hated that. I hated how effortless it was for her. Like this version of our life was enough for her. Like I hadn't been slowly unraveling for weeks while she was doing God knows what behind my back. I spent the next day playing it cool. Not because I forgave her. Not because I was unsure. But because I needed more. I needed the full truth, no assumptions, no guesses. If I was gonna fall apart, I wanted to know exactly what broke me. So I called Darren, our head of IT, and asked if he could help me pull some data from the company car's GPS logs. I lied and said we had a billing error and needed mileage tracking for audits. He didn't even blink. 20 minutes later, I had access to the entire driving history of that vehicle for the last 4 months. The first time I saw our address on the list, I felt sick. Not because she was there, but because I wasn't. I was out of town at a conference. She'd used that opportunity to invite someone over. And not just once. The timestamps matched the days she'd claimed to be at therapy. Therapy of all things. She'd cried at the kitchen table and told me she was working through unresolved trauma. I supported her. I encouraged her. I even offered to pay for extra sessions. Meanwhile, she was taking rides to our own house with a man from my office. But here's where it got worse. The logs showed stops at a lakeside cabin 2 hours north, registered under her maiden name. Repeated visits. Private. Remote. I hadn't even known it existed. I sat back in my chair, looking at the printout. My hands were trembling. I wasn't just dealing with a random affair. This was structured, ongoing, intimate, planned like a second life. And the more I stared at those addresses, the more I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was a partnership. And I had no idea who the other man really was. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling fan, listening to its slow mechanical rhythm and trying to match my breathing to something that wasn't her lying in our bed upstairs. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that scarf again. That kiss in the video. That cabin address burned into the paper like a challenge I wasn't sure I could face. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was how normal everything still felt. The hum of the fridge. The faint ticking of the wall clock. Her soft footsteps in the hallway above me. It all played out like we were still a couple. Like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I needed to see the cabin with my own eyes. I didn't want to confront her yet. Not without knowing everything. I convinced her I had an early meeting out of town. She didn't question it. She kissed my cheek and said, "Drive safe." Like she hadn't shattered me with every lie she told. I packed a change of clothes, grabbed the GPS printouts, and hit the road. It was a 2-hour drive, but it felt like 10. The entire way there, I ran through every possible scenario in my head. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe the cabin belonged to someone else. Maybe she was renting it for therapy retreats. Maybe Miles was just giving her a ride. I clung to those maybes like lifelines, even though deep down I knew better. I knew. When I finally turned onto the gravel path, my stomach flipped. The trees opened up, and there it was. A quiet, modern-looking cabin tucked between pines and silence. Car was already parked out front. Not hers. Not Miles's either. I parked a few yards away and killed the engine. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone trying to take a picture of the plates. I didn't know what I'd do with it. I just needed proof. Something to ground me. I crept closer, feeling like a trespasser in my own nightmare. Through the front window, I could see the outline of someone moving inside. And then her. Lydia. Laughing. Barefoot. Holding a mug. She looked peaceful. Happy. Like someone who wasn't living a double life. Then another figure entered the room and sat beside her on the couch. And that's when I saw his face. It wasn't Miles. It was Darren. My IT guy. The quiet one. The guy who handed me the GPS logs like they meant nothing. The guy who sat in staff meetings and nodded and never said more than 3 words at a time. I froze. My knees almost buckled. I was so sure it had been Miles. The perfume. The car. The conversation. But it was Darren all along. And they looked comfortable. Familiar. Not like people sneaking around. Like people who'd built a routine. I backed away from the window and nearly tripped over my own feet trying to get back to the car. My heart was pounding in my ears. Darren. Of all people. The one I trusted to help me uncover the truth. He'd handed me his own crime scene, thinking I'd never figure it out. I didn't go back to the cabin. I didn't confront them. I didn't even cry. I just sat in my car for an hour, staring at the trees, wondering how long this had been going on. How many times I'd confided in Darren about my marriage. How many times he'd looked me in the eye, knowing he was living a second life with my wife. And the real question that haunted me, why? Why Darren? Why me? That night, I didn't go home. I booked a cheap motel on the edge of town and stared at the ceiling again. But this time, I wasn't numb. This time, I was planning. The next morning, I watched her walk into our kitchen through the motel room's cracked screen, the video feed on my phone lagging just a bit. I'd installed the app for our home security cameras a year ago, mostly because she insisted. "What if someone breaks in while I'm home alone?" she had said. Funny how she never thought to ask who might be watching when no one was supposed to be home. Watching her now, humming, barefoot, pouring coffee into the mug I bought her for our anniversary, it made my skin crawl. She moved like she hadn't just spent the night tangled up with another man. Like she hadn't come back from a cabin filled with lies and unspoken promises. She had no idea I knew everything. No idea I had stood 10 feet away from the window watching her laugh with Darren like they were playing house. And she definitely had no idea I was watching her now. I stayed in that motel all day, pretending to be at a work retreat. I answered her texts, sent her a good luck when she said she was prepping a presentation. She replied with heart emojis. I felt sick every time one popped up. The longer I sat in that room, the more I realized I couldn't just walk away. I couldn't pretend this didn't happen. But I also didn't want to go nuclear. Yet, I needed answers. Real ones. No guesses. No assumptions. No more maybe it's nothing. So I started digging. I called my bank and requested transaction histories for the last 6 months. I didn't tell them why. Just said it was for taxes. When the report came through, I opened it on my laptop and stared in disbelief. Hundreds, literally hundreds, of dollars spent at places I didn't recognize. Boutiques, organic restaurants, spa resorts. None of them were part of our shared schedule. Then I found a recurring charge from an upscale furniture store in a town 2 hours away, the same town where the cabin was. I cross-referenced the dates with the GPS data Darren had given me. They matched. She hadn't just been visiting the cabin. She'd been furnishing it, decorating it, building a life inside it. Without me, I wanted to scream, break something. Instead, I opened her cloud account. We'd shared passwords for years, and she never changed them. Not even now. Either she didn't think I'd look, or she wanted me to find out. Either way, what I found gutted me. Photos. Dozens of them. Her in the cabin kitchen, posing with throw pillows. Her on the porch with wine. Her in bed, under warm light, holding a book, and Darren beside her, shirtless, laughing. They looked happy, relaxed, like this was real to them. The timestamp on one of the photos? Our wedding anniversary. She had spent our anniversary with him, in a house I didn't know existed, celebrating a version of life I was never invited to. I shut the laptop and just sat there for a long time, my palms sweating. I had all the proof, every answer I needed. But now that I had it, the next question scared me more than anything. What now? Do I tell her I know? Do I confront Darren? Do I disappear and let them find out the hard way? Every option felt wrong. Too big. Too final. I wasn't ready for final. So I did something I'd never done before. I called my sister. She picked up after the second ring and immediately knew something was off. I hadn't cried yet, not once. But the moment she said, "What's going on, Wally?" I cracked. I told her everything. The scarf, the ride, the GPS, the cabin, Darren. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't ask if I was okay. She just said, "You don't burn it all down yet. You let them think they're safe. That's how you get your footing back." And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a lifeline. So I went home that evening like nothing had happened. I kissed Lydia's cheek, ate her homemade pasta, and listened to her tell me about her book club, like the liar she was. And the whole time, I smiled like I believed her, because she thought the game was still hers. But she had no idea it had already changed. By the end of the week, I knew more about Lydia's double life than I ever knew about the one we shared. Every move she made was documented in some form, calendar entries, GPS data, even photos she'd forgotten to delete from her cloud. But I hadn't said a word. I kept acting like the same quiet, agreeable husband she thought she married. I kissed her goodbye in the morning, asked her how her day went in the evening, and even let her complain about how busy her book club had become. She didn't notice a thing. Not the way I watched her a little longer when she talked, or how my hugs had a stiffness I never had to fake before. Lydia was so deep into her own fantasy that she didn't realize she was unraveling in real time. The shift came when she slipped. And she did slip because people who think they've already won stop paying attention. It was a Saturday morning, and she came downstairs in her usual yoga gear, ready to head out for her so-called breathwork session. I was sitting at the kitchen table, casually flipping through the news on my laptop while sipping burnt coffee. I watched her tie her laces, grab her keys, and sling her gym bag over her shoulder. "Want me to make dinner tonight?" I asked, keeping my voice light, neutral, exactly the way she was used to. She paused. "Oh, that's sweet, babe. But I'm actually doing a detox dinner with my group afterward. Probably won't be hungry." I nodded. "Right? The new instructor still working out of that studio on Carroll Street?" Her eyes twitched, just for a second. Yeah, same place." I smiled and returned to my screen like nothing happened. What she didn't know was that I'd already driven past the Carroll Street studio 2 days ago. It had been shut down for months. A note on the door said the business had relocated across town. And Lydia hadn't updated her lie. That was her first mistake. I waited until she left, then called in a favor from a friend who owed me. 30 minutes later, I had access to a private app her so-called wellness group used to coordinate events. No mention of detox dinners. No yoga retreat. No breath work. Just a notification about a gathering 2 hours north, at a private location near a lake. I didn't even need the address to know where they meant. She was going back to the cabin. I didn't follow her this time. I didn't need to. Instead, I stayed home and started preparing. I printed everything: photos, financials, travel logs, cloud screenshots. I made copies, backups. I locked it all in a folder marked insurance. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I just needed to make sure that if this exploded, I'd be the one holding the match and the extinguisher. That night, Lydia came back tired, glowing even. She kissed my forehead as I lay on the couch, pretending to sleep. "You're such a good man," she whispered. I almost laughed. It would have sounded crazy if I had. The next morning, her phone buzzed while she was in the shower. I never touched her phone before, never felt the need. But now, I picked it up and saw the preview from a contact saved as L.M. The message read, "Next time we stay the whole weekend. I didn't want to leave you today." That wasn't a friend. That wasn't a wellness partner. And L.M. didn't stand for some brand or retreat program. It stood for Liar's Manual, which is what I was unofficially writing in my head with every passing hour. When she came downstairs wrapped in a towel, humming, I handed her the phone without flinching. "L.M. texted you?" I said flatly. She froze for a second too long. "Oh, just Lisa from meditation class. She's been emotional lately." I nodded slowly, meeting her eyes. "Sounds intense." She smiled, forced. "Yeah, it's nothing." But I saw it then, the smallest flicker of panic. That moment she realized I was watching her more closely. That something in me had shifted. I wasn't chasing the truth anymore. I was just waiting for it to come crashing down. And she was going to bring the whole thing down herself, piece by stupid piece. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to throw things or call her names. Lydia had built her betrayal like a carefully balanced tower. Neat, polished, tall enough to feel untouchable. But towers like that don't fall from a wrecking ball. They collapse from a single piece pulled loose. I wasn't interested in justice anymore. I wanted her to feel what I felt. Doubt, paranoia, the tightening in your chest when you realize something isn't right, and worse, that someone else already knows. The morning after her fake detox dinner, I called her office. Not directly, no. That would have been messy. I knew she worked under a man named Arthur Willis, a gray-haired executive who still used fax machines and called interns sport. I'd met him once at a holiday party, and he spent 10 minutes talking to me about antique golf clubs. I remembered every detail. That's how I knew how to play it. I created a new email account under a fake name and sent Arthur a simple message with a vague subject line. For your awareness, personal conduct. The body of the email wasn't threatening. No accusations. No names. Just a single line. You may want to be aware of the behavior of one of your senior team members outside the workplace. Some things reflect poorly when tied to company property. Attached, GPS logs and select images. That's it. Just a nudge. I didn't mention Lydia's name, but I made sure the metadata on the attachments would point back to her shared company vehicle. She had been using it to go to the cabin. She had even posed beside it in one of her Instagram stories. All I did was hand over the thread and let someone else start pulling. I didn't hear anything that day. Lydia came home like nothing happened. She made dinner. She sat across from me telling stories about her coworker's new dog. Laughing, eyes bright. She had no clue. And that silence, that normalcy, that's how I knew the bomb hadn't dropped yet. But Monday morning, that's when it started. She came downstairs dressed for work, but something in her posture was different, tighter. Her phone buzzed twice, then again, then again. She glanced at the screen each time but didn't open anything. I watched her from behind my coffee mug, not saying a word. She forced a smile, kissed my cheek, and walked out the door like she was headed to war. I waited exactly 17 minutes, just enough time for her to get on the freeway, before logging into our joint cloud storage. She hadn't noticed the shared folder I added last week, labeled Receipts and Warranties. She probably assumed it was another one of my boring finance folders. I dropped a few more things in there. Screenshots, timeline notes, photos of the cabin from the GPS drone flyover I paid for. Yes, I rented a drone. I needed angles they never considered. By noon, she texted me, "Everything okay? You seem quiet lately." I stared at the message. It was the digital equivalent of her peeking through a crack in the door, unsure if I'd seen the mess she left on the floor. I typed back, "Just focusing on work. You know how it is." She replied instantly with a heart emoji. She was scrambling now, trying to glue the cracks before they split wide open. I didn't respond. That night, she came home late. No excuse this time. Just meetings ran long. I asked how Arthur was, casually, like I wasn't baiting her. She froze. "He's fine, why?" I shrugged. "Just curious." He seemed sharp. Old-fashioned, but sharp. She nodded slowly, eyes narrowing. "He is." Then she excused herself to take a shower, and I heard her pacing upstairs, making soft phone calls behind the closed bathroom door. That was her second mistake. She forgot how sound travels in this house. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. "No, I don't think he knows." And, "It's probably nothing, but still." She was cracking, and I wasn't even touching her yet. The best part? She'd wake up tomorrow to a new email in her inbox. This one wouldn't come from me or from Arthur. It would come from the company's HR department. Because when you build a fantasy on company time using company cars under company contracts, you forget that your job isn't your secret. It's a shared liability. And I was done being the liability in her story. I expected Lydia to spiral, but I didn't expect her to call me. I was making tea in the kitchen, trying to pretend I still functioned like a person, when my phone rang. I glanced down and nearly dropped the kettle. It was Claire, Lydia's younger sister. We hadn't spoken one-on-one in over a year. I figured it was some accidental dial or a misclick, but then she called again. I answered with a cautious, "Hey." Her voice came through low and hurried. "Wally, are you home right now?" I froze. "Yeah, why?" She sighed like she'd been holding something in for too long. "I'm coming over. I need 10 minutes. Please don't tell Lydia." And before I could say a word, she hung up. The next 20 minutes felt like watching thunderclouds gather. Couldn't sit. Couldn't pace. I just stood at the front window, heart pounding, hands numb, waiting for a woman I barely knew anymore to walk through the front door with what? A confession? A warning? A secret that would flip everything upside down? She pulled up fast in her red Civic, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses like someone trying to stay invisible. When I opened the door, she didn't even wait for an invite. She just pushed past me and walked straight into the kitchen like it was her house too. I closed the door behind her, still dazed. She didn't sit. She stayed standing, arms crossed, eyes glassy. I don't know if you know already, she started. But I can't keep quiet about it anymore. I said nothing. I wanted to hear it raw. I didn't want to shape her words. I just nodded slowly. She hesitated, biting her lip. It's Darren, right? My chest tightened. You knew. Claire looked away like the shame was hers. I found out 6 months ago. She was sloppy. She texted him while I was showing her something on her phone. When I saw the name, she panicked and yanked it back. I didn't say anything right away. I thought, maybe it was just flirtation. Maybe she'd cut it off. I leaned on the counter. But she didn't. No, Claire whispered. She didn't. In fact, it got worse. She started lying more, saying she was visiting me when she wasn't. That's when I knew something was really wrong. I stared at her, a mix of gratitude and anger boiling up. Why are you telling me this now? Because, she said, her voice cracking, you don't deserve this. And she's walking around like you're too soft to ever do anything about it. Like you're too decent to fight back. She looked me straight in the eye then. And maybe you are, but I'm not. Claire pulled a flash drive out of her hoodie pocket and set it on the counter. I copied her old phone backups when I helped her set up a new one last year. I shouldn't have. It was wrong. But something in me knew she was lying. My hands trembled as I picked it up. What's on this? Photos, texts, voicemails, stuff I wish I didn't see. She took a shaky breath. One of the voicemails. It's from Darren. He said he was tired of pretending and wanted her to finally leave you. This was before your anniversary. Couldn't breathe. It felt like everything inside me was crumbling into dust. And yet, somehow, I stood there calm. Claire moved toward the door. Do what you want with it. But please, whatever you do, don't let her twist this on you. She's good at that. Before I could thank her, she was already outside. I didn't plug the flash drive in right away. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at it, wondering how long I'd been the only one who didn't know. My wife's betrayal wasn't a secret. It was a network. And now, with that little piece of metal in my hand, I finally had everything. I waited one more day. Just one. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to breathe. Maybe I needed to give her one final chance to come clean. Or maybe, deep down, I just wanted her to look me in the eyes one last time while pretending to love me, so I'd remember exactly what a lie felt like. She came home that evening with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. Said she'd had a stressful day and wanted to relax together. She even massaged my shoulders while I opened the food. Part of me wanted to believe the version of her who laughed across the table that night was real. But the truth was sitting upstairs on my laptop, flashing across the screen in cruel little chat bubbles and blurry, 2 intimate photos from her hidden phone folder. The voicemail from Darren, raw and desperate, still echoed in my ears. So I waited until she was brushing her teeth, and I walked into the bedroom holding a plain white envelope. Inside were 2 things. A printed screenshot of that voicemail transcription, and the signed divorce agreement I'd filed earlier that afternoon. She stepped out of the bathroom in her robe, towel on her head, and froze when she saw me holding it. What's that? She asked. I handed it to her. Calm. No yelling. No drama. She opened it slowly, her face shifting with each line her eyes scanned. When she looked up, her mouth parted, but no sound came out. I'm not here to ask why, I said. I'm not interested in your excuses. I just wanted you to know I know. And I'm done. Wally, she started, trying to take a step toward me. I held up a hand. Don't. And for the first time since this all began, she didn't talk her way out of anything. She just stood there, exposed, frozen, like the fantasy she'd built was finally dissolving under real light. I packed quietly that night. Just the essentials. I didn't need much. I'd already signed a short lease on a place across town. A quiet little apartment above a bookstore. Claire helped me move in the next morning. She brought coffee and said she was proud of me. And you know what? I finally felt proud of myself too. It didn't matter anymore who Lydia had become. What mattered was that I didn't lose myself trying to hold together something that was never whole. A few weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Clean. Quiet. I left the keys in a mailbox and didn't look back. The cabin? Sold. The company car? Reclaimed. Darren? Fired. HR didn't like discovering he was mentoring someone else's wife during work hours. And me? I'm doing okay. I read more. I sleep better. I go on walks in the evening without checking my phone every 5 seconds. I even joined a weekly trivia group at the bookstore downstairs. No lies. No games. Just people showing up because they want to. Funny how sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is also the most freeing. So to anyone listening, don't wait for the perfect moment to choose yourself. Just choose. Quietly, firmly, without asking permission. She had her ending planned, but I wrote my own. Thanks for watching this story on the Reddit Confessions channel. What do you think was the moment Lydia's mask started to crack? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever caught someone lying in a small but unforgettable way, tell us your story. We'll see you in the next one.